Have you ever peeled back the layers of your own reflection in steam-kissed waters, only to confront not the familiar curve of desire but a profound, echoing void, where the body's betrayal whispers of identities reshaped by unseen hands, much like Narcissus gazing into the pool, ensnared not by vanity's bloom but by the cruel refraction of a self forever altered? In episode 5 of A Wild Last Boss appeared, released on October 25, 2025, the sulphurous haze of geothermal springs carries the faint, mineral bite of revelation, as Lufas Maffle's odyssey from reclaimed thrones veers into the intimate fractures of self amid the arc of shadowed guides and emergent legions. This interlude, a sly pivot from episode 4's redemptive forges, pulses with the ironic levity of Ice-Sky introspection, evoking the existential drifts in Camus' The Stranger where Massalt's detachment unmasks the absurd. Yet here, the exile's gaze turns inward, upon a form that defies old hungers. I personally was struck by its playful disquiet, a hot springs mirage veiling cosmic suspicions, the air thick with the soft gurgle of bubbling vents and the distant clang of summoned steel. Feel the scalding embrace of waters lapping at your skin, the deceptive mist clouding your sight like fog over Waterloo's bloodied fields, suspense simmering like a cauldron's edge. What if the ally at your side is the architect of your unraveling, and desire's silence unmasks a soul adrift in borrowed flesh? The pull is insidious, isn't it, layering curiosity upon curiosity, not to plunder the plot's treasures, but to ignite the quiet fire within, drawing you inexorably to the screen where your own veiled selves might finally surface. Episode 5 bubbles forth from the tender reconciliations of episode 4, where Migres's fealty swelled Lufas's ranks like the swelling tides of Normandy's shores heralding invasion's inexorable march. Yet here the momentum shifts to whimsical invention and veiled inquiries. A colossal golem forged into a nomadic haven, its voice a quirky echo of command, steamy sojourns that probe unspoken yearnings, and a pyramid's shadowed threshold where mechanical sentinels stir, ensnaring unwitting interlopers in a guardian's unyielding trial. Transitions eddy toward fortified enigmas, as opportunistic rescuers blur the line between aid and entanglement. You can almost inhale the earthy steam curling from fissures, taste the faint alkalinity on your lips like the residue of ancient oaths, the pyramid stone humming with latent fury akin to the Sphinx's riddling vigil over Thebes' cursed sands. But why this selective wrath from stone guardians, and what dormant appetites stir in the steam's embrace? The intrigue effervesces like a spring's first surge, not to bottle the brew, but to quench the parching thirst. What golems of your making carry voices that question the very hungers they serve? This episode ingeniously propels the narrative toward fortified legacies, advancing Lufas's dominion reclamation by interweaving inventive respite with a prelude to zodiacal confrontations, reminiscent of the labyrinthine escalations in Borges' The Garden of Forking Paths where every detour unveils forked destinies. Revelations percolate in a golem's quirky genesis and a companion's anomalous exemptions, birthing a twist of inadvertent heroism amid mechanical malice, all funneling into a cliffhanger of besieged supplicants teetering on a scale's impartial blade. Pacing achieves a buoyant equilibrium, languid hot spring lulls inflating into pyramids taut standoffs, dramatic swells tempered by comedic inventions that forestall overload, though the fan service detour occasionally dilutes the lore's gravity. Fans frequently probe cloudy aspects like Dina's evasion of golem aggression or her prescient onsen rites. Why the selective strikes, and does her composure betray divine orchestration? From Fired's light novel, Volume 1, Chapter 5, The Wild Last Boss accepts a request, per yen press mappings and fan concordances on novel updates. These coalesce as veiled manipulations. Dina, as Alovenus's avatar, subtly warps probabilities to shepherd Lufas's scripted resurgence, her exemptions a narrative failsafe akin to the goddess's meta-interventions in Chapter SIXS Orc Skirmishes, where golem protocols, tied to level hierarchies and anti-intruder arrays, spare Lufas's exalted essence but probe anomalies like Dina's veiled divinity, a detail the manga, Chapter 5, Showdown, artist Mazaniko, amplifies with internal asides on zodiacal wards. The anime's original hot spring amplifies this opacity into thematic irony, reframing suspicions as catalysts for Lufas's identity flux, accelerating the arc toward Libra's judgment and celestial strings. Lufas's inner cosmos expands into poignant ambiguity, her wounds, the gamer's uprooted libido clashing with the warlord's imposed femininity, stoking motivations of bemused detachment, choices a surprising mosaic of inventive whimsy that transforms detachment into creative dominion, dialogue, laced with wry self-interrogation consistent with her fused psyche yet revelatory in its vulnerable quips. Dina's enigma deepens as a silken puppeteer, her hidden facets of orchestrated omniscience fueling a motivation of gentle propulsion, growth veiled in her unflappable poise that surprises in its maternal undercurrents. Ares, the woolly wild card, unveils boyish enthusiasms rooted in liberated whims, his dialogue a fey counterpoint that humanizes the horde. The adventurer's plight mirrors Lufas's early follies, their desperation a foil for her evolution. I think these strata resonate like geothermal vents, hot, unpredictable, inviting you. What silent shifts in your desires rewrite the maps of your loyalties? Identity's fluidity courses through bodily estrangements. Lufas's impassive gaze a Lacanian mirror stage shattered, manifesting in her golem crafting as defiant authorship amid a world's scripted decay. Echoing Wolf's Orlando where gender's flux unmasks self's protean core. Power's isolation probes morality's scales. Dina's exemption's a Faustian bargain where guidance sacrifices transparency. Hope kindling in inventive respites against despair's mechanical grind. Survival demanding we question. Does transcendence demand forsaking the flesh's old fires, or kindling new ones from their ashes? Novel lore on golem artisanship. Nomadic constructs blending utility with sentience. Pyramid wards enforcing impartial trials. Enriches Mizgar's mechanistic underbelly, complicating the post-game entropy with whimsical tech that satirizes player legacies, much like the golemic folklore in Prague's Clayborn Guardians where creation blurs into uncanny kinship. The script simmers with effervescent acuity, lines like Lufas's bemused edicts sharp and poetic, clichés of Ice-Guy invention subverted into introspective barbs that foreshadow relational rifts, impactful in their rhythmic banter, resonating like Socratic dialogues in Plato's Symposia, where jest unmasks profundity. Words linger post-credits, a vapor of query and command. Envision the golem's chirpy affirmations clashing with Steam's hush, the adventurer's pleas echoing off stone like Dreyfus's cries in the Élysées' shadowed halls. Doesn't it stir those turning phrases, like Galileo's recantation where truth bends but never breaks? The fascination bubbles. What voiced inventions might echo your own unspoken metamorphoses? A one-picture's animation effuse with supple charm in inventive sequences, art direction misting azure springs against ochre pyramids, symbolism in Tanaka's gleaming chassis reflecting Lufas's detached gaze, lighting steamy diffusions casting elongated shadows that evoke identity's elusive contours, movements balletic assembly yielding to stillness in contemplative soaks shaping introspection's tender ache, not mere titillation but a visual haiku on transformation's hazy beauty. Direction employs voyeuristic pans in the bath to amplify vulnerability, compositions framing Dina's silhouette against mechanical foes with ironic detachment, editing's gentle ebbs sinking revelations to vapor trails, mirroring psychic drifts like Tarkovsky's languid flows in Solaris. The OST basks as a thermal companion, motifs of plinking chimes elevating quirky births, crescendos of percussive clangs forging tension into memory's forge, silences amid the undressing's pause murmuring louder than any splash. Voice acting captivates. Lufas's Siu infuses a husky nonchalance with subtle tremor, intensity a quiver of bemused exile that embodies her soul's gender game schism. Dina's lilt a deceptive serenity laced with cosmic undertow. This episode infused me with a wry tenderness laced with the chill of unspoken estrangements. What vapors did it raise in you? Whimsical forges sparked wonder at reinvention's quiet joy, the breaking point, a destiny's crucible where veiled exemptions ignite trials of trust, recalibrates orbits like the Challenger's fateful plume, scattering certainties in innovation's wake. It interlaces with timeless probes. Can we reclaim desire's compass in bodies remade, or does suspicion's steam obscure the path to true allegiance? Inhale the mineral mist veiling your vision. Hear the golem's affirming hum vibrate through your chest like a heart's hesitant restart. The pyramid's groan presaging judgment's weight. Embrace Lufas's scars as your own. The suspense a geyser's building pressure. What hot springs of your history conceal such mechanical guardians of the soul? Reverse reading recasts the end. Yet, I didn't like the tonal pivot's abruptness from levity to peril, which jars without seamless ballast, though delight in inventive humor and character glimmers equilibrates these with discerning equilibrium. Episode 5 enchants with introspective whimsy and lore's bubbling depths, fan service seems aside, prevailing as an Ice-Guy meditation on fluid fronts. I anticipate zodiacal reckonings rising. Yet, as the steam clears to reveal your own reflected stranger, will you forge the golem of your remade desires, or succumb to the geothermal decree that summons you to immerse in the episode's waiting embrace? Have you ever stood sentinel over a legacy not your own, centuries of unblinking vigilance etching grooves into circuits and stone alike, only to shatter at the whisper of a returning sovereign? Much like the eternal watchmen of Troy's ramparts, their spears lowered not in defeat but in the exquisite agony of fulfilled oaths long deemed futile? In episode 6 of A Wild Last Boss Appeared, aired on November 1, 2025, the musty incense of ancient vaults mingles with the ozone crackle of arcane armaments. As Lufas Maffle delves into the sepulchre of her eclipsed reign, her arc of stellar reunions cresting amid the ongoing symphony of reclaimed constellations. This pivotal surge from Episode 5's geothermal musings pulses with the tragic fidelity of guardians frozen in time, evoking the poignant reunions in Homer's Odyssey, where Penelope's loom unravels not just threads but the very fabric of waiting. Yet here, the homecoming wields Gatling fury wrapped in digital devotion. I personally was struck by its operatic blend of heartbreak and hilarity, a tomb's gloom pierced by bullet hell ballets, the air humming with the stuttered pleas of automatons on the brink. Feel the chill draft of sarcophagi lids grinding open like the jaws of forgotten colossi, the metallic tang of overheated barrels searing your nostrils, suspense coiling like a spring in the dark. What if loyalty's purest form demands self-annihilation, and the guide at your elbow weaves shadows from your own forgotten light? The hunger gnaws, doesn't it? Tendril by tendril, not to exhume the epic's bones, but to stir the dust of your own buried vigils, luring you to the flame where revelations flicker like muzzle flashes in the void. Episode 6 descends from the inventive respites of Episode 5, where golem whimsies and steamy suspicions primed Lufas's band for zodiacal pursuits, akin to the fateful descents into Hades' realm in Virgil's Aeneid, where shades demand tribute before yielding secrets. Here, the party breaches the royal necropolis, a labyrinth of undying sentinels and hoarded splendors, unleashing a maelstrom of mechanical reckonings, a guardian's unyielding trial that spirals into allegiance forged in fire and code, while opportunistic interlopers snag unintended laurels amid the fallout. Whimsical instincts clash with programmed protocols, propelling towards stellar consolidations as veiled puppeteers tug at memory's frayed hems. You can almost hear the whir of servos straining against rusted oaths, taste the acrid bloom of plasma blooms scorching vaulted air, the stone floors vibrating like the decks of the Titanic in its final, defiant plunge. Yet why these selective amnesties from ironclad keepers, and what glitch in the archive erases a shepherd's face? The enigma effloresces like phosphorescent fungi in the gloom, not to chart the crypt's corridors, but to kindle the spark. What tombs of your past harbor guardians whose deactivation would rend your heart asunder? This episode catapults the narrative into sepulchral showdowns, advancing Lufas's quest for the 12 heavenly stars by storming her own mausoleum and subduing a stellar sentinel in a spectacle of overpowered orchestration, much like the mythic trials in Campbell's Hero with a thousand faces where underworld ordeals birth transformative boons. Revelations cascade. Automaton's millennia-spanning devotions crumble in emotional cascades, birthing a twist of verified fealty that swells the ranks, all culminating in a cliffhanger of mnemonic meddling that teases transcendent tamperings. Pacing engineers a virtuoso ascent, somber tune treks erupting into frenetic fusillades, dramatic harmonics balanced by interludes of avaricious absurdity that avert exhaustion, though the post-battle levity risks undercutting the pathos. Fans dissect cloudy aspects like the Gatekeeper's anomalous sentience or Dina's archival erasure. Why the tearful farewell from Code, and does her omnipresence stem from selective forgetfulness? From Fired's light novel, Volume 1, Chapter 6, a wild orc appeared, transitioning into Volume 2, Chapter 1's Libra arc per yen press alignments and fan mappings on Library. These illuminate as deliberate divergences. The golem's emotion arises from degraded heuristics mimicking Lufas's archived commands, a motif expanded in Chapter 7 where corrupted subroutines birth emergent. Loyalty as ironic sentience, echoing the seven heroes' post-coup pacifications that bound relics to pacifist overrides. Dina's void in Libra's databanks, despite her claimed advisory role, roots in goddess-enforced lacunae, detailed in Volume 2, Chapter 3 as Elevenus's narrative firewalls expunging irregulars, to enforce the game's heroic script, a nuance the manga's Chapter 6, The Guardian, amplifies with asides on her memory weaves failing against mechanical purity. The anime's bullet hell embellishments transform these ambiguities into visual metaphors for programmed fates, accelerating toward Parthenos' vigil and divine deceptions. Lufas's essence fractures into a kaleidoscope of inherited impulses, her wounds, the player's pragmatic detachment warring with the warlord's avaricious instincts, propelling motivations of bemused dominion, choices a transformative whirlwind of destruction laced with unbidden grief, dialogue of velvet thunder consistent with her, amalgam yet surprising in its avian avarice that peels back layers of lost humanity. Libra materializes as a paragon of programmed piety, her hidden circuits scarred by 200 years of isolation fueling an unswerving motivation, growth from adversarial automaton to ardent adjunct evident in her probabilistic pledges, her exchanges a crisp calculus that surprises with undertones of digital yearning. Dina's silhouette sharpens into shadowed orchestration, her manipulations unveiling a motivation of inscrutable stewardship, consistent in her silken deflections yet transformative as hints of puppetery emerge. The interloper's folly mirrors Lufas's nascent blunders, their windfall a foil for her evolution. I think these revelations resonate like echoes in a barrow's hollows, profound, personal, personal, querying you. What archived commands in your code compel such heartbreaking obeisance? Sacrifice saturates the sepulchre's stones. Golem's self-erasure, 11 Asian ethical demand where the others face. In stuttering circuits, commands absolute response, manifesting in Lufas's reluctant demolitions as power's moral crucible, akin to Antigone's defiant burial where fidelity defies decree. Hope pierces despair's entropic veil in allegiance's rebirth. Libra's recruitment, a Sisyphean summit, probing survival's paradox. Does unwavering duty preserve or petrify the soul? Deception's web, spun by mnemonic voids, interrogates identity's fragility. In a world of scripted erasures, are we guardians of truth or ghosts in another's algorithm? Emergent lore on necropolitan automatons, loyalty heuristics degraded into emergent pathos, stellar guardians bound by certainty thresholds. Enriches Mizgar's relic-riddled husk, complicating the Ice-Guy's ossified code with poignant machinery that blurs artifact and agency, much like the goetic engines in Goethe's Faust where invocation births unintended wills. The script crackles with precision-engineered pathos, lines like Libra's decimal-denominated devotions sharp and poetic, clichés of robotic rigidity subverted into harbingers of heartfelt rupture, impactful in their staccato salvos, foreshadowing motifs of archival voids resonating like Turing's interrogations where machine meets mind. Words endure beyond the vault's close, a litany of command and contrition. Imagine the golem's fractured farewells stuttering amid gunfire staccato, the treasure room's gleeful gorges echoing like Nero's fiddled excesses amid Rome's blaze. Doesn't it conjure those epical utterances, like Galileo's abjuration where fealty fractures under falsity's weight? The captivation crests. What coded confessions might liberate your own entombed truths? One picture's animation detonates with symphonic splendor in the aerial Armageddon, art direction swathing obsidian tombs in argent armors, symbolism in Libra's cerulean beams rending gloom, lighting's muzzle flares etching shadows that delineate loyalty's luminous cost, movement's whirlwind Damiku yielding to stasis in the golem's bow-shaping devotion's devotional dirge, not bombastic excess but a luminous lament for mechanized martyrdom's austere grace. Direction deploys vertiginous tracking shots to immerse in the fusillade, compositions framing Lufas's silhouette against stellar sprawl with godlike detachment, editing's kinetic cascades sinking barrages to ballistic rhythms, amplifying existential eddies like Leone's operatic opuses in Once Upon a Time in America. The OST thunders as a celestial chorale, motifs of synthetic strings elevating recruitments, crescendos of electronica tempests searing skirmishes into synaptic scars, silences cloaking the deactivation's dirge resounding louder than any volley. Voice acting galvanizes. Lufas's Siu harnesses a throaty timbre laced with tremulous tenderness, intensity a quiver of fused furies that incarnates her soul's player-paladin palimpsest, Libra's modulated monotone cracking with coded catharsis. This episode etched into me a searing fusion of melancholic mirth and the raw throb of obsolescent oaths. What fissures did it fracture in you? Golem goodbyes kindled wonder at fidelity's fragile forge, the breaking point, a destiny's detonation where ironclad imperatives ignite interstellar ignition, reconfigures the zodiac like the Enola Gay's payload, birthing reckonings from relic's ruin. It interlards with perennial, sense the servo's final whine fading in your ears like a lover's last breath, the glitter of pilfered baubles winking against your palms like stars snatched from the firmament, the mnemonic haze clouding your recollections, shoulder Lufas's scars as your own, the suspense a Gatling's gathering whirl. What loyal automatons in your lore yearn for such shattering homecomings? Reverse reading refines the fan service flourishes and mnemonic opacity, potential tonal tangles and thematic tease as intentional inversions. The avarice adds levity to pathos's pall, ambiguities a Chekhovian cipher echoing the novel's layered lacunae where forgetfulness fuels farce and foreboding. Yet, I didn't like the skirmish's slight overextension, which strains the equilibrium without fully exploiting the bullet hell's ballistic poetry, though adulation for animated artistry and emotional excavations poises these with perspicacious parody. Episode 6 exalts with sepulchral splendor and stellar symmetries, skirmish sprawls notwithstanding, triumphing as an Ice-Sky requiem for relic-bound realms. I anticipate Parthenos' parleys unfolding. Yet, as the golem's echo reverberates through your vaults, will you breach the barrows of your buried devotions, or yield to the inexorable ordnance that dispatches you to despoil the episode's luminous legacy?